The Meridian ship emerged from hyperspace in a flash of iridescent light, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight across Earth's atmosphere like a cosmic prism. Inside the command center, High Observer Venn studied the holographic display of Earth with 6 eyes that had seen 1,000 worlds. Each of those eyes now narrowed in disappointment. Another oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, they noted, their melodic voice carrying through the ship's living crystal walls. Gravity at merely 1 g. The dominant species appears to have evolved in these soft conditions. The last words carried the weight of predetermined judgment. The Meridians were the galaxy's self-appointed arbiters of civilization, having evolved on a world 3 times Earth's gravity. Their crystalline-based biology had made them nearly indestructible, their minds capable of processing information at speeds that would make quantum computers seem sluggish. They had expected more from the signals they'd intercepted from this sector. Dr. Sarah Chen was delivering a lecture on xenobiology at MIT when the Meridian ship appeared. The irony wasn't lost on her. One moment theorizing about potential alien life, the next watching humanity's first contact through the lecture hall's windows. Within hours, she found herself rushed to the hastily assembled First Contact Center in Geneva, one of Earth's few experts in theoretical alien biology. The Meridian's first transmission was perfectly formatted in every human language simultaneously. "We are the Meridians, guardians of galactic civilization. We have come to evaluate your species' worthiness for inclusion in the greater community of spacefaring races." What followed was a week of increasingly tense diplomatic exchanges. The Meridians made little effort to hide their disdain for human biology. They saw our need for sleep as weakness, our reliance on regular sustenance as inefficient, our emotional responses as primitive. Their own crystalline forms required rest only once every few Earth months, and they absorbed energy directly from stellar radiation. The breaking point came during a demonstration of Meridian technological superiority. High Observer Venn was showcasing their matter manipulation abilities when the unthinkable happened. A power surge in their demonstration device created a cascading reaction, threatening to collapse the entire conference center. The Meridian delegation froze, their crystalline forms literally crystallizing in shock as their processing systems tried to calculate a solution. Dr. Chen didn't calculate. She acted. Running toward the malfunctioning device, she remembered her graduate work on theoretical energy matrices. The device was building to critical mass, but if she could interrupt the power flow, she grabbed the crystalline power core with her bare hands, despite the burning pain, and twisted it counterclockwise. Basic physics: disrupt the energy flow, prevent the cascade. The device powered down, leaving her with second-degree burns, but averting disaster. The Meridians stared at her in what could only be described as confusion, their crystalline forms shifting colors rapidly. "You damaged your biological form," High Observer Venn stated, approaching her as medics rushed to treat her burns. "Your actions were illogical. Our calculations showed a 47.3% chance of survival if everyone evacuated. You reduced your personal survival probability to 31.2% by attempting intervention." Dr. Chen looked up from her bandaged hands, meeting all 6 of Venn's eyes. "Someone had to try," she said simply. "That's what humans do." The Meridians huddled together, their crystalline forms resonating in their species' equivalent of intense discussion. When they turned back, something had changed in their posture. "We have made an error in our initial assessment," High Observer Venn announced. "We assumed that superior civilization required superior physical form. Yet you acted despite biological disadvantage, despite pain, despite unfavorable probability." They paused, their form shifting to a deeper blue. "We request permission to begin a formal evaluation of humanity, not of your physical capabilities, which we now realize may be irrelevant, but of this other quality you possess." Dr. Chen smiled through her pain. "We call it determination," she said. "And speaking for myself, I'd be very interested in learning how our species might complement each other rather than compete." The meridians shifted to a color she hadn't seen before, perhaps their equivalent of thoughtfulness. Humanity's trial period would begin, but not in the way they had originally planned. They had come expecting to find another primitive species clawing its way out of its gravity well. Instead, they found themselves facing a profound question. What if their entire understanding of strength was fundamentally flawed? As news of the upcoming evaluation spread across Earth, humanity began to prepare. But unlike the Meridian's previous evaluations of other species, this wouldn't be a test of physical might or technological advancement. It would be a test of something far more intangible, and perhaps far more important. The Meridians were about to learn that strength comes in many forms, and some of the strongest materials in the universe aren't crystal at all. The United Nations Assembly Hall hummed with anticipation as High Observer Ven's crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across the gathered crowd. 3 weeks had passed since the incident with Dr. Chen, and now the Meridians were ready to announce their evaluation protocols. Our traditional tests of civilization have proven inadequate. Ven began, their form shifting through shades of deep blue and violet. We have designed new trials, ones that we believe will truly measure your species' potential. Dr. Chen sat in the front row, her recently healed hands folded in her lap. Beside her sat Commander Maya Rodriguez, the newly appointed human liaison to the Meridian evaluation team. The commander's experience leading rescue operations in extreme environments had made her the perfect candidate for the role. The trials will be threefold, Ven continued. First, a test of adaptation. Teams must survive in rapidly changing environments. Second, a test of innovation, solving problems with limited resources. Third, a test of persistence, continuing in the face of seemingly impossible odds. A murmur ran through the assembly. These weren't the tests of strength or technological prowess everyone had expected. Commander Rodriguez leaned over to Dr. Chen and whispered, "They're testing our humanity, not our capabilities." The Meridians had designated a remote area of the Australian outback as the testing ground. Teams from across Earth would compete, not against each other, but against the challenges themselves. The selection process was unlike anything humanity had seen before. "We don't need the strongest or the smartest," Commander Rodriguez argued in the selection committee. "We need people who don't know how to quit." They chose Maria Patel, a search and rescue volunteer who once spent 3 days trapped in a cave with a broken leg, keeping an injured hiker alive through sheer force of will. James O'Neill, a deep-sea welder who routinely worked in conditions that would break most humans. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a climate scientist who lived in Antarctica for 2 years studying ice cores, continuing her research even after funding was cut, and she had to maintain the station alone. The Meridians watched the selection process with their equivalent of puzzlement, their crystalline forms flickering with confused patterns of light. "Your choices are illogical," one of their junior observers noted. "None of these humans possess exceptional physical or mental capabilities by your species' standards." "That's exactly the point," Dr. Chen replied. "They possess something far more valuable. They've all faced impossible situations and refused to give up." Training began immediately, but rather than physical conditioning or technical preparation, Commander Rodriguez focused on team cohesion and psychological resilience. The team spent days in simulation chambers, facing ever-changing challenges. They failed often, but they always got back up. "I don't understand," Maria said one evening, after a particularly grueling session. "The Meridians can process information faster than our best computers. Their bodies are practically indestructible. How are we supposed to compete with that?" Dr. Chen smiled, sharing a knowing look with Commander Rodriguez. "We're not competing with their strengths," she explained. "We're showing them ours. The Meridians can process 1,000,000 solutions in a second, but they freeze when none of them work. They can survive almost anything, but they've never learned to adapt because they've never had to." A week before the trials were set to begin, High Observer Ven requested a meeting with the human team. Their crystalline form had taken on a new pattern, one that Dr. Chen had begun to recognize as curiosity. "We have been observing your preparation methods," Ven stated. "They appear to be counterproductive. You deliberately place yourselves in situations where failure is likely, rather than training to prevent failure." Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. "We're not training to prevent failure," she explained. "We're training to continue despite it. Humans don't succeed because we're perfect. We succeed because we learn from every failure, adapt, and try again." The concept seemed to disturb the Meridians deeply. Their species had evolved to be so perfect, so crystalline in their thoughts and actions, that the idea of embracing imperfection was alien to them. Yet they couldn't deny the patterns they were seeing. As the day of the trials approached, tension mounted globally. The Meridians had announced that the trials would be broadcast across their vast network of civilized worlds. Humanity would be judged not just by the Meridians, but by the entire galactic community. The night before the trials began, the team gathered under the stars of the outback. The Meridian ship hung in the sky above them, its crystalline surface reflecting the starlight like a diamond in the heavens. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Commander Rodriguez addressed her team, "remember this. They think they're testing our worthiness to join their civilization. But I think we're showing them something they've never seen before, what it means to be human." Dr. Chen watched the team, seeing in their eyes not the fear of failure, but the determination to persist. The Meridians had created these trials expecting to test human capabilities. Instead, they were about to witness something their perfect, crystalline minds had never contemplated: the power of imperfect beings who refuse to be limited by their imperfections. As the first light of dawn approached, carrying with it the beginning of the trials, humanity prepared to show the galaxy that true strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about what you do after you break. The first trial began at dawn. The Meridian ship projected a massive holographic dome over the testing ground, transforming the Australian outback into an ever-shifting maze of environments. The human team stood at the entrance, their environmental suits gleaming in the early morning light. "The adaptation trial begins now," High Observer Ven announced, their crystalline form pulsing with anticipation. "You must reach the central point while surviving random environmental shifts. Each shift brings a new challenge. There is no pattern to predict." The team stepped into the dome. Immediately, the arid desert transformed into a sub-zero tundra. The Meridians watched, expecting confusion or hesitation. Instead, they'd witnessed something unprecedented. "Circular formation," Commander Rodriguez called out. The team moved as one, sharing body heat while Yuki, drawing from her Antarctic experience, quickly assessed the terrain. Within minutes, they were moving efficiently across the frozen landscape. The environment shifted again, now a high-pressure deep ocean simulation. James took point, his deep-sea welding experience proving invaluable. "Conserve oxygen," he guided the others. "Slow, steady movements. Follow my lead." The Meridian's monitoring crystals flickered with increasing intensity. "They are adapting," a junior observer noted, their tone carrying what might have been awe. Not through superior physical ability, but through shared knowledge and immediate tactical adjustment. Hour after hour, the environments changed. Volcanic wastelands, low-gravity vacuum, high-pressure gas giants. The team faced each challenge not by being the strongest or most resistant, but by combining their experiences and adapting their strategies on the fly. What truly caught the Meridians' attention, however, was how the humans handled failure. When Maria slipped during a high-gravity phase, injuring her ankle, the team didn't abandon her or even slow down. They reorganized instantly, supporting her while redistributing her tasks among themselves. "Inefficient," one Meridian observer commented. "Their collective speed has decreased by 23.7%. Yet they continue," Ven responded, their crystalline form showing new patterns of light never before seen in their species. "They sacrifice optimal performance to preserve their unit integrity." "This is unexpected." The second trial, innovation, proved even more revealing. The team faced a series of increasingly complex problems with deliberately insufficient resources. The Meridians had designed these challenges expecting the humans to eventually reach an impossible scenario. Instead, they watched in astonishment as the humans broke every rule of conventional problem-solving. When faced with a failing life support system and not enough parts to repair it properly, Dr. Tanaka rigged a solution using the crystalline containers of their water rations as makeshift filter membranes. "That is not the intended use of those materials," a Meridian protested. "But it works," Dr. Chen replied from the observation station. Humans have a saying, "Necessity is the mother of invention." The breaking point came during a particularly devastating challenge. The team found themselves in a simulated radioactive zone with failing radiation shields. The Meridians watched, certain that the humans would finally be forced to retreat. Commander Rodriguez looked at her team, then at their remaining supplies. "The shields are failing symmetrically," she observed. "If we can't maintain all of them, we could concentrate the power." Maria finished her thought, already moving. "Redirect the energy from 3 shields to 1. That would leave most of the team exposed," James pointed out. "Not if we stay close," Yuki added, understanding the plan. 1 shield, maximum power, minimum radius." The Meridians watched in disbelief as the humans huddled together under a single reinforced shield, sacrificing comfort and personal space to survive. Their crystalline forms vibrated with agitation at such an unorthodox solution. "This is not optimal," one insisted. "The radiation exposure, even at reduced levels, is survivable," Dr. Chen interrupted. "They're not trying to find the perfect solution. They're finding the solution that lets everyone survive." As the second trial concluded, the Meridian observation team fell into intense discussion. Their crystalline forms resonated with complex patterns as they tried to process what they were witnessing. These humans weren't succeeding despite their limitations. They were succeeding because of how they dealt with those limitations. The final trial would be the true test of persistence, and the Meridians had designed it to be impossible. Yet as they watched the humans rest and recover, supporting each other, sharing stories, and even laughing despite their exhaustion and injuries, a new possibility began to crystallize in their minds. What if they had misunderstood the very nature of strength? What if the ability to persist, to adapt, to innovate in the face of limitations was more valuable than never having limitations at all? As night fell over the testing grounds, the human team prepared for their final challenge, unaware that they had already begun to shatter something far more fundamental than any test parameters. They were breaking the Meridian's entire understanding of what made a species worthy of the stars. High Observer Ven stood before the assembled galactic representatives, their crystalline form radiating intensity. The final trial was about to begin, and for the first time in their long existence, they felt uncertainty. "This test was designed to be impossible," Ven announced, their voice resonating through the observation chamber. "No species has ever completed it. No species was expected to." The human team stood ready in the testing dome, unaware of Ven's words. Commander Rodriguez looked at her people, Maria favoring her injured ankle, James with his burned hands bandaged from the radiation shield incident, Yuki still shivering occasionally from their Arctic challenges. Yet their eyes were clear, determined. The dome darkened, and the final trial began. The environment shifted into something entirely alien, a crystalline landscape that seemed to defy physics itself. The air became thick, almost liquid, and gravity began to fluctuate randomly. "Your objective," Ven's voice echoed, "is to reach the central crystal structure and activate its core. The environment will actively resist your progress. There is no known solution." The team soon discovered what this meant. The crystal landscape wasn't just difficult terrain, it was actively hostile. Crystal spires would grow suddenly, blocking paths they'd just mapped. The ground would become liquid without warning, then solid again moments later. The very air seemed to fight against their movements. It's like the entire environment is alive, Yuki observed, her scientific mind racing. And it's learning from our attempts. 3 hours in, they had made barely any progress. Every strategy they tried was countered. Every path they found was closed. The Meridians watched, expecting frustration, surrender, or rage. Instead, they saw something extraordinary. The humans gathered in a circle, sitting down right in the middle of the hostile landscape. They began to talk. They're stopping. A junior observer's crystalline form flickered in confusion. Dr. Chen, watching from the observation chamber, smiled. They're thinking. More importantly, they're thinking together. The team had realized something fundamental about the challenge. The environment adapts to counter our solutions, Commander Rodriguez said to her team. But what if that's not a bug? What if it's a feature? James nodded, understanding dawning. It learns from us, which means we can teach it, Maria finished. What followed stunned the watching galaxy. The team began to move in seemingly random patterns, attempting obviously flawed solutions. The environment responded, adapting to counter these apparent strategies. But with each adaptation, they're hurting it, Dr. Chen whispered, like shepherds guiding a flock. The environment's responses became more predictable as it adapted to counter the humans' apparent mistakes. With each response, the crystal landscape's changes became more focused on specific areas, exactly where the humans wanted those changes to occur. 6 hours in, they had created a path to the central crystal structure, not by fighting the environment, but by guiding its responses. The landscape had twisted itself into exactly the configuration they needed, thinking it was blocking their progress when it was actually enabling it. But reaching the structure was only half the challenge. The core activation required sustained contact in a chamber where gravity and reality itself seemed to break down. The Meridians knew it was physically impossible for any biological being to maintain the necessary contact. Commander Rodriguez looked at her team. No words were needed. They had come this far together. They would finish this together. What the galaxy witnessed next would be spoken about for centuries. The team formed a human chain, anchoring each other against the impossible forces in the chamber. When one person's strength began to fail, another would step in. When the forces grew too intense, they adapted their formation. When the environment tried to separate them, they held on tighter. This is beyond physical endurance, a Meridian observer noted, their form pulsing with agitation. Their bodies should have given out hours ago. They're not running on physical energy anymore, Dr. Chen replied softly. They're running on something else. 9 hours after the trial began, the core activated. The crystalline landscape shimmered and dissolved. The team collapsed together, exhausted but intact. They had achieved the impossible not through superior strength or intelligence, but through persistence, adaptation, and most importantly, unity. High Observer Ven's crystalline form had gone completely transparent, a state never before seen in their species. They turned to the galactic representatives, their voice carrying a new tone. We designed this trial to be impossible, they said, because we believed that knowing one's limitations was a sign of civilization. These humans, they appear to view impossible situations not as endpoints, but as challenges to overcome. Not alone, but together. The human team was helping each other up, checking injuries, sharing tired smiles. They hadn't just survived the impossible trial. They had fundamentally changed how an entire galaxy understood the concept of strength. As medical teams rushed to attend to the exhausted humans, Dr. Chen approached Ven. You designed this trial to test our limits, she said. But you didn't understand something fundamental about humans. And what is that? Ven asked, their form still transparent with wonder. We don't believe in limits. We never have. Every impossible thing humanity has achieved, flight, space travel, curing diseases, started with someone deciding that impossible wasn't good enough. The final trial had ended, but its implications were just beginning to ripple through the galaxy. The Meridians had sought to test humanity's worthiness to join galactic civilization. Instead, they had discovered that perhaps galactic civilization had something to learn from humanity. 3 months after the trials, the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation sparkled with the crystalline forms of 1,000 different species. The Meridians had called the first full assembly in over a century, and anticipation hummed through the living crystal walls. High Observer Ven stood before the assembly, their form now permanently touched with that unprecedented transparency that had first appeared during the final trial. Beside them stood Commander Rodriguez and her team, recovered from their ordeal but forever changed by it. Dr. Chen waited with them, ready to help bridge the gap between human and alien understanding. We gathered here to evaluate humanity's worthiness to join our civilization. Then began, their voice resonating through the chamber. We were wrong. We should have been evaluating our understanding of civilization itself. The chamber erupted in crystalline vibrations, the equivalent of murmuring among the assembled species. Ven raised all 4 of their upper limbs for silence. For millennia, we have judged species by their ability to overcome physical limitations through evolution or technology. The humans showed us a different path. They embraced their limitations, using them as catalysts for growth and innovation. The holographic displays activated, showing moments from the trials. The team huddling together under one shield. The creative use of water containers as filters. The final trial, where they had turned an impossible challenge into a demonstration of collective problem-solving. We thought ourselves perfect, Ven continued. Our crystalline forms are nearly indestructible. Our minds can process vast amounts of information. Yet when faced with situations outside our parameters, we freeze. We stop. The humans never stop. Maria stepped forward, her formerly injured ankle now healed. We fail, she said simply. We fail a lot. But we learn from every failure. We adapt. We help each other up and try again. A crystalline being from the Rigel sector pulsed with skeptical colors. This is inefficient. Progress should be calculated, precise. James laughed, surprising the assembly. Life isn't precise. The universe isn't precise. The ability to handle imprecision, to adapt to chaos. That's true progress. Dr. Chen watched as understanding began to ripple through the assembly. The crystalline beings were starting to vibrate in new patterns, their perfect forms attempting to comprehend these imperfect ideas. We propose a new framework for galactic civilization, Ven announced. One that values not just technological or biological advancement, but the capacity for adaptation, innovation, and collective resilience. Humanity will not join our civilization as students, but as teachers. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Never in the history of the Confederation had a new species been admitted with such status. Yet as the evidence was presented, as the stories were told, the logic became clear even to these beings of pure logic. What followed was unprecedented. The Meridians and other crystalline species began requesting human advisors, not to learn about technology or science, but to understand how humans approached problems, how they handled failure, how they maintained determination in the face of impossible odds. Commander Rodriguez's team found themselves teaching the most advanced species in the galaxy something they had never learned in all their eons of existence: how to embrace imperfection as a source of strength. 1 year after the trials, humanity had spread throughout the galaxy not as conquistadors or subordinates, but as partners. Human creativity and resilience complemented the logical perfection of the crystalline species. Together, they began solving problems that had stumped the Confederation for millennia. Dr. Chen stood with High Observer Ven on the observation deck of Earth's first intergalactic embassy, watching ships from 100 worlds drift through the solar system. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" she asked. Ven's crystalline form shimmered with what she had learned was amusement. "Impossible," they said. "Which, as you humans have taught us, means it was inevitable." Below them, in the embassy's main hall, A new batch of human advisors was preparing to depart for various crystalline worlds. They weren't the strongest, the smartest, or the most advanced of their species. They were simply human, wonderfully, impossibly, imperfectly human. And that was exactly what the galaxy needed. We thought we were testing humanity's worthiness to join the stars, Venn reflected. Instead, humanity tested our worthiness to guide them. A test we failed, but from which, like humans, we learned and grew. Dr. Chen smiled, watching a crystalline being awkwardly attempt a human handshake with one of the new advisors. That's the greatest strength of all, isn't it? Not being perfect, but being willing to learn and change. As the sun set on another Earth Day, humanity's first chapter as a galactic civilization was ending. But like all human endeavors, it wasn't an ending at all, just another beginning. The impossible had been achieved, and in true human fashion, that only meant it was time to find new impossibilities to overcome. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.